Welcome back to Let the Chips Fly podcast. And in this episode, we talk about the 2026 April newsletter called Chips from the Charlotte Woodcarvers.
It's a really fascinating look at the internal mechanics of a highly dedicated community.
Yeah, it really is. Because, you probably drive past places like the Cathcart Center every Tuesday without giving it a second thought. You see a nondescript community center from the road, maybe, I don't know, a few cars in the lot. But inside, there's this incredibly vibrant, passionate ecosystem just operating right under our noses.
Absolutely.
And we are looking at Volume 44, Issue 4 from April 2026. And the goal of our deep dive today isn't just to talk about, wood types or knife sharpening.
Right.
We are pulling apart how a local club manages the intense pressure of preparing for their biggest event of the year, how they handle community dynamics, and, this is very unexpected, how these dedicated analog craftsmen are tackling advanced modern cybersecurity.
It's totally an operational puzzle. And what you get from this newsletter is a very clear picture of a community in crunch time. I mean, the 43rd showcase of wood carvings is staring them right down.
Oh, yeah.
It's scheduled for April 17th through the 19th, which at the time this newsletter was published is just 17 days away.
Which is terrifying if you know anything about woodworking. 17 days is, well, it's nothing.
Yeah, it really is.
You can't just press a button and render a physical carving faster. The wood has to be shaped, sanded, sealed, painted, and then allowed to actually dry.
Exactly. And you can sense that pressure right from the first page. The club president, Steve Silitano, he doesn't sugarcoat it at all.
No, he doesn't.
He writes in his message that he still has a significant amount of painting and finishing left to do before the doors even open.
I love that the leader of the organization is openly admitting he is behind schedule. Like, that's just so real. And the theme for the show this year is HELP, I need somebody. A nice little Beatles reference that doubles as a literal cry for help as the deadline approaches.
It's a very honest theme, because when you look at the sheer scale of what they are trying to pull off, they have genuinely outdone themselves for this 43rd year. I mean, they have a record number of vendors lined up.
Wow.
Yeah, managed by organizers Jerry Clark and Joe Davis. They even have a waiting list for vendors, which, tells you a lot about the industry standing of this showcase.
It's a major draw. And it isn't just a marketplace for buying gouges and mallets either. The educational component is massive this year.
Huge.
They have a record 7 seminars lined up, and the topics aren't your basic, intro to whittling. They are wildly specific. For instance, Joan Heiser is teaching something called quilting on wood.
That's a fascinating technique. For those unfamiliar, it often involves using wood-burning tools or micro-gouges to create intricate geometric patterns on a flat piece of wood.
Like actual fabric quilts.
Yeah, mimicking the seams and fabric textures of a traditional quilt. It requires just an immense amount of patience and a very steady hand.
It sounds beautiful. And on the completely opposite end of the spectrum, you have Catherine Overcash leading a seminar on marionette carving.
Which is an entirely different discipline. With marionettes, you aren't just carving a static figure, you are basically engineering a kinetic object.
Right, it has to move.
Exactly. You have to carve the joints to articulate properly, balance the weight of the limbs, and design the head so it responds naturally to the strings.
So we have this world-class setup, right? Record vendors, incredibly deep educational seminars. But as I was reading the showcase update by Keith Jones, I noticed a pretty glaring issue.
Yeah.
He mentions that out of the 130 active members in the club, only 81 carvers have actually signed up to participate in the showcase. Plus, they are short on judging support.
That's right.
So I have to ask, if this is the biggest event of the year with record vendors and seminars, why are they practically begging their own members to sign up?
Well, it's a classic dilemma in volunteer-run organizations. You're seeing the Pareto principle in action, the 80-20 rule.
Where 20% of the people do 80% of the work.
Precisely. Roughly 20% of the people do all the heavy lifting. But there's also a psychological barrier here.
I'd imagine it's imposter syndrome. I mean, woodworking is a deeply vulnerable thing. You are spending dozens of hours alone in a garage, putting your literal blood, sweat, and splinters into a piece of wood.
Yeah, very much so.
The idea of putting that on a table with a little white card next to it, waiting for a panel of judges to critique your technique against a master carver, that is intimidating. I wouldn't want to do it.
Your instinct is spot on. And the club leadership seems to recognize that fear, too. They aren't just sending out emails demanding participation. They are actively trying to lower the barrier to entry.
How so?
Well, the referee team actually set up a showcase prep session on April 7th.
How does that work? Are they, prejudging the items?
No, it's designed to be the exact opposite of judging. They invite members to bring their completed or in-progress carvings in to simply review them in a safe, low-stakes environment.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, the referees help the members figure out exactly which category they belong in because the categorization rules can be complex, and they just offer constructive suggestions.
Okay, I get it.
They are really trying to demystify the process. They want those hesitant 49 members to realize that the showcase isn't about harsh criticism, it's about celebrating the craft.
It's like a rehearsal dinner before a wedding. Just walk through the paces so you know where to stand.
Exactly.
But because that member participation is lagging, and therefore registration fees might be down, the club still has to ensure the financial survival of the event. And reading through this newsletter, it becomes very clear that the economic engine of this entire club relies on one thing, and that's the Mega Raffle.
The raffle is fascinating from a structural standpoint. It really is the financial bedrock for the rest of their calendar year.
Usually a local club raffle might have a couple of gift baskets, maybe a nice power tool if you're lucky. And the Charlotte Woodcarvers usually aim for about 100 items. But this year they have over 150 raffle items and 20 silent auction items.
It's massive.
President Steve Silitano actually writes a joke in the newsletter, telling members that if they need to find him during the chaotic weekend, just hold up a $20 bill and I will find you.
It's a funny line, but it highlights the very real pressure he's under to monetize the foot traffic of the showcase.
To put the sheer scale of this into perspective, reading the prize list felt like looking at a miniature Las Vegas casino built specifically for carpenters.
That's a great way to put it.
Instead of dropping chips on a roulette table hoping to win a sports car, you are buying raffle tickets and holding your breath for a pack of Mirka sanding pads or a Fordham K.5240 flex shaft tool.
A flex shaft tool, by the way, is a highly coveted piece of gear.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's essentially a high-powered precision rotary tool, kind of like a dentist's drill, but built for hogging out wood or doing ultra-fine detail work. It's an absolute game changer for a hobbyist, and it's not cheap.
Right, and they source this massive inventory through two very different avenues. First, you have the grassroots side. Members are physically clearing out their home workshops and garages to donate. They're bringing in buffing wheels, extra table saws, bandsaws, finished carvings, knives, and strops.
That happens a lot in these legacy hobby communities. Tools outlast their owners, or maybe someone upgrades to a larger bandsaw and donates their starter model to the club.
It's cool to see.
It is the community literally emptying its pockets to ensure its own survival.
And then you have the corporate side, which was spearheaded by Keith Jones. He treated this like a full-time sales job. He reached out to over 125 corporate donors.
Incredible hustle.
Yeah, and he managed to secure a Craftsman table saw with a stand, a Bostage 1.5 horsepower 6-gallon compressor, and a Council Tool 16-inch camp carver axe.
A Council tool axe is serious steel. That's a premium item that will absolutely draw crowds and drive ticket sales. And the contrast between a member bringing in a used buffing wheel from their garage and a corporate sponsor shipping and a brand new air compressor shows a really healthy, diversified approach to fundraising.
But out of all the shiny new power tools and corporate sponsorships, the item that caught my eye in the silent auction was something called the 2026 Friendship Lamp.
The friendship lamp is arguably the most important item on that table, culturally speaking.
It's a brilliant concept. From what the newsletter describes, the lamp is constructed from individual blocks of wood, and each block is meticulously carved by a different member of the club. They specifically mention that newly finished blocks from members like Rod Gatlin, Al Gaskill, and Jonathan Creason had just arrived.
Think about the mechanics of building a lamp like that. You need a central structure, the wiring, the hardware. But the aesthetic value, the reason someone will bid hundreds of dollars for it, comes from those individual distinct blocks.
Right, the personal touch.
Exactly. You have different styles, different skill levels, maybe different types of wood, all stacked together to create a single functioning piece of art.
And someone is going to pay a pretty penny to take it home. The physical craft of the individuals literally builds the financial foundation for the whole group.
It really does.
But obviously, a club doesn't just exist for 3 days in April. The newsletter spends a lot of time talking about the day-to-day glue that holds them together through the quiet months at the Cathcart Center and the Bazemore Active Adult Center.
The sustaining culture. A massive showcase will bring people in, sure, but the weekly Tuesday meetups are what keep them coming back for years.
You really get a sense of the demand for knowledge in this group. They talk about a recent one-day relief carving class taught by Dick Card, who drove in all the way from the Greenville Club.
Relief carving, as opposed to the marionettes we discussed earlier, is the art of carving figures into a flat panel of wood so that they project outward, creating an illusion of 3D depth.
Like a coin.
Yeah, it's essentially how coins are minted, but done with wood and chisels.
And apparently people were desperate to learn it. The class was strictly limited to 10 people, it sold out immediately, and they had to cram 3 extra tables into the back of their normal room just to make it work. I'm just picturing this slightly chaotic, loud room full of sawdust with people elbow to elbow trying to learn a new chisel technique.
It paints a picture of a very healthy, active organization. It's not a sterile classroom. And amidst all that activity, they still take the time for community care.
Yeah, I saw that.
The newsletter includes a dedicated shout-out wishing a speedy recovery to a lifetime member, Bill Dominic, who had just undergone back surgery.
Which is a lovely reminder that these people are friends first, woodcarvers second.
Definitely.
But I have to admit, my absolute favorite part of the day-to-day culture section was the food. The dusk to dawn menu they printed in the newsletter is just wild to me.
The comfort food spread.
That is an understatement. The standout item is called the Southern Splitters. The description reads, 2 Nathan's famous beef franks, fried crisp, placed in buttered toasted buns and then completely smothered in chili and slaw. Right. And if that isn't heavy enough, the menu also boasts giant portions of popcorn chicken with ranch or blue cheese and massive bacon cheeseburgers.
Yeah.
Now, I have a theory about this, and you have to tell me if I'm crazy. Wait, is this what they're eating while operating table saws and razor-sharp gouges? Because a buttered bun mixed with sleep-inducing comfort food seems like a terrible combination when you need a steady hand.
I think we need to separate the timeline there a bit.
Okay, good.
They aren't likely eating chili dogs with one hand and running a bandsaw with the other. If you look at the schedule, they specifically carve out time for things like the pizza and training night scheduled for April 14th.
Tasty.
The food isn't fuel for the carving. The carving is almost an excuse for the food.
Okay, so the tools go down, the food comes out.
Precisely. You have to remember the demographic and the purpose of a local hobby club. The shared meals over heavy local comfort food, that is the actual social hub.
That makes a lot of sense.
Sitting around a cramped table, wiping grease off your hands while talking to a guy who just had back surgery. That builds the trust required to pull off a 43-year-old event. You can't ask someone to donate their weekend to hauling a Craftsman table saw for a raffle if you haven't shared a meal with them first.
That makes perfect sense. The food is the social grease. So up to this point in the newsletter, we have a very clear picture of a deeply traditional community. They work with their hands, they value physical craftsmanship, they gather in person over Southern food, they trade analog tools.
A very grounded group.
Right, which is why the final section of this newsletter completely threw me. I had to read it twice because it felt like a misprint.
It is a massive thematic pivot.
Totally.
You turn the page from advertisements for camp axes and relief carving classes to a highly technical brief on modern cybersecurity.
Yes. The editor of the newsletter, Neil McGuire, includes a detailed synopsis of a webinar he recently attended. And it wasn't about wood finishes. It was entirely focused on iPhone security and account protection.
Yeah.
And the advice he passes along to this club of woodcarvers isn't just your standard generic IT advice like don't click on weird links. He goes incredibly deep.
He really does. He is advocating for a level of digital hygiene that many corporate environments struggle to implement.
Seriously.
He advises the club members to ditch traditional passwords entirely. He pushes for password managers and the adoption of modern passkeys.
And he doesn't stop there. He pushes for robust multi-factor authentication, or MFA. But he specifically calls out that getting a text message with a 6-digit code isn't enough. He recommends using physical hardware keys, like YubiKeys, for authentication.
Which is advanced.
Yeah, I mean, why is SMS a problem, and what makes a physical key so much better?
So getting a code via SMS is vulnerable to something called SIM swapping.
Okay.
A malicious actor can trick your cell phone provider into porting your phone number to their device. Once they have your number, they get your text messages, including all your security codes.
That is awful.
It really is. A YubiKey, on the other hand, is a physical piece of hardware. It uses cryptography to prove your identity. A remote hacker halfway across the world cannot log into your account unless they physically break into your house and steal that specific piece of hardware plugged into your computer.
Which is such an elegant concept for a woodworker. Using a YubiKey is basically like having a physical, high-tech padlock for your digital toolbox. You can't pick it from afar.
Exactly. And Neil Maguire also recommends setting up a highly secure recovery email address. He specifically names privacy-focused services like Proton Mail or Apple's iCloud to manage the recovery of your primary accounts.
I noticed that detail about Apple. He advises sticking to Apple native apps because their privacy policies are generally superior to third-party alternatives.
Hmm.
And he suggests running anti-malware software like Malwarebytes and securing home Wi-Fi with unique admin credentials. I have to be honest, I know tech professionals who don't even use Proton Mail or hardware keys. Why is this advanced level of digital defense sitting in the middle of a woodcarving newsletter?
It actually makes perfect sense when you consider the stakes we just talked about. Think about the Mega Raffle. Think about the vendor fees, the venue deposits, the member dues.
Okay, yeah.
The Charlotte Woodcarvers have a bank account. They have an email list with 130 active members and likely hundreds of alumni and corporate sponsors.
Oh, wow. You're right. They are a prime target.
They really are. Volunteer organizations and local clubs are huge targets for what is known as business email compromise, or BEC attacks.
How does that work?
A hacker compromises the club president's email, sends a message to the treasurer saying, hey, we need to urgently wire money to this new vendor for the showcase, and the money just vanishes. Or they compromise the newsletter list and send out a phishing link to hundreds of retirees. Neil Maguire isn't just being paranoid, he is actively protecting the club's infrastructure.
That reframes the entire article. They aren't hiding from the modern world just because they practice an old art form. They understand that while the club physically exists at the Cathcart Center, it functionally operates on servers, in email threads, and in digital bank accounts.
It proves that being a traditionalist does not require you to be a Luddite. In fact, true craftsmanship is about understanding your environment and your tools.
That's a great point.
The same meticulous care that Neil Maguire applies to choosing the right wood, sharpening his gouge, and sealing the final piece, he is applying to his digital footprint. It is all about maintenance.
You wouldn't leave a prized, handcrafted marionette out in the rain to rot. And you shouldn't leave your club's digital bank accounts exposed to a phishing attack. The discipline is exactly the same, just applied to a different medium.
And that level of discipline is something we can all learn from. We tend to view our digital tools as abstract or, disposable.
Right.
If an app breaks, we download a new one. If we forget a password, we hit reset. But in reality, our digital identities require deliberate, routine care.
I think that is a fantastic takeaway for us today. It leaves you with a really provocative thought to ponder. Think about how your own digital and physical lives intersect. We spend so much time and money curating our physical spaces. We change the oil in our cars, we fix leaky roofs, we invest in our hobbies.
Wow, we do.
But are the modern digital tools that you rely on every single day, your password managers, your banking logins, your primary recovery emails, are they as meticulously maintained, respected, and understood as a master woodcarver's perfectly sharpened tool? It's definitely something that makes me want to go audit my own security settings right now. Go to charlottewoodcarvers.com/newsletters for the PDF version of this newsletter and all the past newsletters dating back to 1983.